Hey, welcome back to Rock Stardust. Today we're looking at the Tough Guys of Rock series, following on some other videos I've done on JJ Burnell, Thin Lizzy, Phil Lynott, and Ronnie Van Zant. Today we're looking at Bon Scott from AC/DC, the legendary frontman. And this is a great example of a real tough guy with an awesome personality. A lot of great stories. So he was actually born Ronald Belford Scott, and born in Forfar, Scotland, 9th of July 1946. And what happens was his family immigrated to Australia in 1952. That was part of like a £10 POM scheme that was prominent back then. There was quite a lot of people that came from that part of the world. Scotland and parts of the UK, Ireland, to Australia at that time. So he early on at school, the other kids would sort of pick on his Scottish accent, so he learned to speak like an Australian sort of accent, but had his own sort of take on it. Mainly just to keep himself in one piece. The name Bon Scott actually comes from, he was sort of nicknamed, he was Bonnie Scott. So, that whole Bonnie Scottish, and that's where Bon came from. So he dropped out of school at 15, and he soon joined mobs, street gangs, which were like teenage hoodlums, really. And he stood out as the toughest member of the band, so he ended up, of the gang, and ended up leading the gangs. He did a lot of manual jobs as well, before becoming a rock star, or getting into the mold there. So I think that kept him fit too. He was a tough bloke because he'd done a lot of manual work, so he was fit. And he wasn't afraid to, use his fists, and he basically was a hell of a bloke too, for those that knew him, and made a lot of friends. So supposedly made like 10 friends every time he went out at night, and so just an awesome character with such a unique take on life. Yeah, Bon wasn't afraid to get into street fights. He did a lot of that growing up, and apparently was really good at it. According to Angus Young, he was one of the best street fighters he'd ever seen. His first tattoo had the words, "Death before dishonor," which was tattooed to his lower belly. There's a lot in that, like he was very committed. There's a story of when a friend of his was beaten up by some cops. He went absolutely ballistic and beat one of them half to death. He got arrested stealing 12 gallons of petrol housed in a maximum security facility. So Bon wrote Jailbreak, as he ended up spending, close to a year behind bars. It's crazy. So one of the key turning points in his career was he got into an argument with his band at the time, Fraternity. And he was really drunk, and got upset with them, and then offered to bash one of the brains out of one of the band members, and ended up throwing down his bottle of Jack Daniels and shattered all over the ground, and took off on his motorbike, screaming down the street, and ended up crashing into a car. But that moment, because he was then in a bad way, it took him a long time to recover. But that was a key pivotal moment in his career. Yeah, so Bon had to lay low to recover from his injuries, and as a result did some part-time, work for music producer Vince Lovegrove, who was just sort of starting up this new agency, putting out posters and doing bits and pieces. So it was actually Vince that went on to recommend Bon to George Young as a singer for the band, as AC/DC were looking for a singer. Now he was, obviously 9 years older than Angus, and and that sort of thing. But he had that character and sense of humour, and they just took a real shine to him. So he got asked to join the band, and he definitely had that, great, frontman personality, no nonsense, great storytelling, raspy voice, image, with a tooth missing, a shark tooth around the neck, bare chested, and he could come across quite menacing as well. So he was a perfect fit for the band. But Bon was really fond of a blue, which is an Aussie term for getting into a fisticuffs, but preferred to use his clever wit, and sense of humour, and it was great with the one-liners than actually fight. But if it came down to it, he could with very good effect. So famously, soon after he joined the band, they had an amazing gig opportunity where they played the Sunbury Festival, AC/DC, which was a big festival. It was like, this is 1975, so it was like Australia's version of Woodstock, but rather than sort of peace and love, it was, beer cans and punches, So Deep Purple headlined, and AC/DC was set to go on after them. But when they went up to play, Deep Purple's roadies, and they had taken all their gear. Now, the band was absolutely mortified because this was a big moment for them, and horrified to see that. So their manager said, "Look, guys, I'm happy for you to go and, do what you need to do." So upset, they got out there and they obviously had permission to throw punches, which they did. So it was like AC/DC's Entourage versus Deep Purple's, and some of the band members got involved, including Bon. But apparently after that, no one ever took AC/DC's gear again. So that was a classic. Yeah, and then obviously that was, from that moment on, that really did help their reputation. Also rumoured that JJ Burnell called Bon a fucking hippie before a Who show in 1979, which led to an altercation. That's interesting, and that's one I'm very curious to know. Be a fly on the wall with that one. He said to Joe Perry in 1978, "We just want to make the walls cave in and ceiling collapse. Music is meant to be played as loudly as possible, really raw and punchy, and I'll punch out anyone who doesn't like it that way. I do, so it doesn't agree with me on that." So I thought it was a hard case, and and I do recall there's a story where him back in the day in Australia, when he was with that early band Fraternity, he famously dived off a pontoon full of sharks, and there was apparently sharks everywhere because there'd been like fish bait and guts, blood and stuff, and jellyfish everywhere, and he swam around it without a fear, which is a pretty legendary tale. In the days leading up to Bon's death, he had reached out to a lot of his, friends, family, extended family, people that he hadn't spoken to for a long, long time, which was really interesting. And, it was almost like he sensed something was coming, and he always thought he would die relatively young. But, at the time, this is a classic. He someone asked him about what his health and fitness schedule was, or this is what Bon had to say about the rock and roll life. It keeps me fit. The alcohol, nasty woman, sweat on stage, bad food. It's all very good for you. and he was so excited about the new album, Highway to Hell. So excited when they heard those songs back. But that's a damn shame, because it was at the top of the game, and his death is shrouded in mystery as much as he was, in so many ways, because he had so many different personalities. Could be the most lovable, warm-hearted guy, real character, and at the same time could flip the switch and be a real handful, and he really was a great artist, great front man, unique, awesome singer. He really launched AC/DC to where they got to, and that's my favourite version of the band. And he's much missed, but Bon Scott, what a legend. And I think some of those great albums, you look back, Power Age, Dirty Deeds, Don't Do It Cheap. I particularly really like that one, and obviously Highway to Hell. It's just awesome. But yeah, no, it's great just to share a few stories about him. There's so many out there. Please do share your recollections in the comment section. Please like the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really helps, and I'll keep you right up to date with all the new vids that are coming out. And do dig into my other links there too. There's some good stuff on other tough guys at rock, and just the background about them, and yeah, it's interesting stuff. So look, thanks for watching. Have a great week. We'll catch you next one.